What up, my fellow Knicks fans? This is your guy Marcellus Ease, and don't panic quite yet. Now, in Volume 1 of this series, I went over how James Dolan's ongoing beef with the New York Daily News has had a trickle-down effect with the rest of the media, especially throughout the country, when it comes to covering the Knicks. Now, this guy right here, Max Kellerman, is actually going to express some of these sentiments and where it really comes from. Because, like I said in Volume 1, there's this us versus them mentality with the media when it comes to covering James Dolan's Knicks. And you're going to see where some of these sentiments come from. And remember, Max Kellerman right here, he's a longtime New York Knicks fan. And now that he lives in LA, he stated out of his own mouth that he's no longer a Knicks fan. But you guys check it out and see where some of these sentiments come from.
No, you don't even fire Dolan. You know who you have to fire first? The fans. Because you, including the guy who got escorted, are spending money on this pathetic joke of a franchise. So Dolan is never punished. In fact, the Forbes list comes out every year. Guess who's the #1 most valuable franchise in the NBA ahead of the Lakers with LeBron James?
See, and the media talks very bad about James Dolan. And for him to still be thriving, they take that personally. That's one of the issues right there.
The New York Knicks, and they're up, way up over last year. As long as you patronize the Knicks, Dolan is not punished for his awful behavior.
Wow, Dolan is not punished. Did he commit a crime that we should know about? That we should get authorities to go arrest him? Punished? What has he done to deserve such a punishment? See, Max Kellerman, Knicks fans like this, we should expel from the base. We don't need guys like this, especially on television, acting so desperate. This is insane. People from New York City is not like that. We don't act desperate like that. Sorry, Max.
The organization is a joke. They will never get a top-flight free agent. They will never succeed as long as Dolan owns the team.
See, all this sounds pretty personal. This sounds very personal.
He doesn't care because you will keep patronizing the product. And he has enough influence in New York that he can silence a lot of the media. And
right there. That's the real issue right there. I'm going to replay it for you guys right there. It's funny because I stated that yesterday. It's a trickle effect. James Dolan's relationship with the Daily News has had a trickle effect on the rest of the media. And the media is sort of like, when you watch one of these movies like during medieval times and, the church is very powerful, the media is sort of like that sometimes, where it's like you offend one branch of them and they're going to come after you as a whole. It's almost like they're like the modern day clergy.
They will never succeed as long as Dolan owns the team. He doesn't care because you will keep patronizing the product. And he has enough influence in New York that he can silence a lot of the media. And he tries to, believe me. I have worked. I was on ESPN radio when Dolan tried to exert pressure to stop saying bad things about him or the Knicks. And by the way, I was one of the people trying to say as many good things as I could. I'm a Knicks fan, or was at the time.
See, and look how quickly you turned. Once you climbed up the ranks in the media, you quickly turned. And remind you, James Dolan was one of the owners of the DSPs. He owned Optimum Cable. So the media kind of, that's like the main channel for the media to get on. They have to go through James Dolan. So he's actually a step ahead of them. He's one of the guys that owns the current lines to, like I said, the cable networks. So there could be online, they could be like not online, but they could be like a little like scuffle with the top ranks, with the top brass guys in charge of these networks, and then him being in charge of DSP before he sold it.
No, the Knicks are a joke. Fizdale should not lose his job because Dolan, James Dolan, is the worst owner in the NBA.
Nobody said yesterday during that press conference that Fizdale was going to lose his job. They actually stated they had confidence in him. And the reason why they showed up is because there's an issue with the team not performing well against other teams that have young players or, have injuries. And we're down by 20 points. You could look at the game against Detroit. The Knicks were down for most of that matchup without 4 marquee players. You look at the game against Sacramento after playing up against Boston, they played down against Sacramento and was down by 20 points for a whole second half. And then at home, they played horribly against Cleveland. This is what they were there for. Steve Mills and Scott Perry kept talking about they wanted a consistent product for all 4 quarters, and they feel like they have a good enough team to get that. They even mentioned they didn't care about the record. They just wanted consistency.
Actually, you're wrong. And here's why you're wrong about what you just said about Fizdale. Because every argument you made should justify him wanting to be fired. If he wanted to get out of Memphis, why the hell should he want to stay in New York? Based off of what you just explained about the franchise. And that's the issue in question. I didn't say he deserved to be fired because he's not a good coach. I didn't say he deserved to be fired because he can't coach. I said he's been cut off at the knees. The die has been cast. It has already been established. We are about to move in a new direction. I don't care what anybody says. You do not have a press conference like that, which, by the way, James Dolan knew was going to happen, okay? I don't know whether he told Steve Mills to do that or not, but I do know that he was aware that Steve Mills was going to do it because they got blown out by Cleveland. And
Well, either James Dolan or Steve Mills is the one that called for it. But either or, it's good that the fan base gets to hear from them because we were told that we're going to have a better product this year. And the fact that we're still getting blown out, there's lackluster efforts for, not for all 4 quarters. These things, it's pretty good for the fan base to get an explanation of it. But they didn't seem pressed about the record. They weren't really concerned about that. They were very pressed about the effort for 4 quarters. Like I said, the losses in Detroit, Sacramento, and Cleveland, those were really bad losses.
And then three of their 8 losses this year, they've got blown out by Detroit. They've got blown out by Sacramento. They've got blown out by Cleveland. 2 non-playoff teams and 1 that didn't even belong in there. As far as I'm concerned, the Milwaukee Bucks had a bye series last year in the playoffs when they played the Pistons because the Pistons were no match for them and everybody knew it, particularly with Blake Griffin unhealthy but still playing hurt. At the end of the day, you do not come out in a press conference and say, we are supposed to be better after 10 games. And once again, Max, this also points to your analytics.
After, all the free agents that they bought in this season, Julius Randle, Morris, they actually have, Bobby Portis, you could count him too. They actually have more talent than they did last season. And they won 17 games last year, which isn't great. But they definitely have more talent this year to be competitive. Maybe to even win 25 plus games, but they shouldn't be that 17-win team with Mario Hezonja and guys like Cantor. They're much better than that this season. They definitely did bring in new talent, but they shouldn't be getting blown out by Chicago or Sacramento or even, one of the bottom tier teams in the league. Even the Washington Wizards this season, they shouldn't be getting blown out by teams like that.
It shows that has something to do with Steve Mills as well. Why? Because if you recall, last year, Daryl Morey let go of Carmelo Anthony. When did he let go of Carmelo Anthony, Max? It was at the 10-game mark. What are the analytics dude known for doing? Evaluating things on a 10-game radius. It's what they do. 10 games in, you're Steve Mills, and you elect to have a press conference.
Yeah, I just want to say Del Morey, even having Carmelo on the team, that was a Chris Paul move, in my opinion. Mike D'Antoni's not feeling Melo at all. They probably knew it wasn't going to work. It is what it is.
Impromptu, because a team that was expected to be sorry looked sorry.
Look.
Really? That doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. You did it for a reason.
Yeah, but with the Knicks right now, they do have injuries at point guard. With Alfred Payton with the hamstring, Dennis Smith Jr. quite not being in shape, and then he had an issue with his back. It's just a bad start to the season, especially at point guard, and that's really where it kind of starts for the Knicks. There's nobody dictating pace. You got forwards dribbling the ball too much, trying to create. It's just off right now.
I want to give fans a remedy, Knicks fans a remedy, because you're not going to fire Dolan. You must fire yourselves or it will never get better. fire yourselves from being a Knicks fan.
Look at that. Fire yourselves from being a Knicks fan. Does this not sound personal? This is a guy supposed to evaluate the team. He's an analyst.
The Knicks have run unopposed in New York City for decades, no longer. The Brooklyn Nets are in town now. The Nets used to be on Long Island, used to be the New York Nets in the ABA when Dr. J won a championship for you. Then they go to Jersey. They're back in New York. Hold on one second. Back in New York, in Brooklyn. Fire yourselves from being Knicks fans. You will punish Dolan. That will start to change things. Root for the Nets. Well, Stephen A., I just want to say something about.
See, there he goes again. The media takes very offensive. I guess it's very offensive to them when they tell the public that they don't like somebody, that they shouldn't like him either, and that person keeps becoming successful. James Dolan has made more and more money over the years while getting basically bashed through all the media. And you can see in our political system too. I mean, I'm not trying to get political here, but even with Trump, you know, he's not liked by the media, but it kind of, you see how they react because it's throwing them off that, you know, a lot of people still end up liking him and they vote for him and that he won. It just threw them off. They couldn't believe that their word wasn't good enough to influence the people. Like I said, the media, the mass media in general, they're sort of like the clergy. The old school days of where the church kind of ran things close to the government. You know, they kind of were like hand in hand. The media thinks that their influence is much bigger than what it really is. And it really throws them off when things like, you know, with James Dolan, they bash him, but yet he's still being supported by the fan base.
Charles Oakley was escorted from Madison Square Garden. He was the heart and soul of those teams. Patrick Ewing was his team, but he was escorted. Paul O'Neill was the heart and soul of the Yankees. Would Paul O'Neill ever be escorted out of Yankee Stadium? Like, is Big Bird going to be escorted off of Sesame Street next? What's next for the New York Knicks?
Let it go. Let it go. It's almost like with Kyrie Irving talking about the world is flat. We got it. Let that go. Because Oakley being escorted.
Yo, you see how he said that? Never. Like a little kid. Like a little kid. That's some shit a little kid would say. Oh,
out of the arena. As egregious as that was, and as bad as that was, and as inexcusable as that was on a part of James Dolan, guess what? That's an afterthought to Knicks fans. What really matters is the fact that Oakley should want to leave because of how bad the product is. And that's where we get back to this. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, in part, chose the Brooklyn Nets over the New York Knicks because Dolan was running this franchise. David Fizdale arrived as the head coach of the
Yeah, not really. Dolan had every right to ask questions. He's about to spend a lot of money. One guy's coming off an injury and not going to play for a year. No one knows how he's really like. The Knicks overall, we have a bad record of just having injured stars. And then Kyrie Irving didn't have a good year last year. He showed lack of leadership. I mean, I don't even think these questions came directly from Dolan. I really think it was an issue with Steve Mills and Scott Perry, because their jobs are the ones that are on the line. If those two don't work out, and you'd have to wait a whole year to find out what exactly is Durant. If that didn't work out, you know, that could be their jobs right there.
New York Knicks, with the endorsement of Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, two surefire first ballot Hall of Famers. I was of the mindset that Mark Jackson should be the head coach. Now, why is that important?
I've never heard Mark Jackson say he wanted the job. Who knows that? Did we ever get confirmation that Mark Jackson is interested in the Knicks? Everyone keeps saying just because he's born in New York City, he went to Bishop Loughlin, oh, he should be the coach of the team. I mean, I've never heard him actually express his interest.
I'm not saying that Mark Jackson was a better coach than David Fizdale. I'm saying that New Yorkers need a New Yorker, because the reality of the situation is that there's no one there that New Yorkers trust. What you need first within the Knicks organization, and this is why I had even told Steve Mills and Scott Perry at the time, I thought they made a mistake. As much as I love Fizdale, and as good of a coach as I think he would be almost any place else, the reason why I was so supportive of Mark Jackson being a coach of the Knicks is because with what you say about Dolan, understand what New Yorkers need. We need somebody that when they speak into the microphone every day, they're the face of the franchise. Somebody we can trust. Somebody when they open their mouth, we know they mean what they say, and we can relate to them because they're one of us as New Yorkers. That's not Fizdale. And that's the only reason, because it's Dolan. If it was any other owner, that's different. But with all the nonsense that comes associated with Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks needed a voice that they could trust so Steve Mills and Scott Perry could be behind the scenes doing their job and Dolan could go play his guitar with his little band. Unfortunately, he didn't do that, and as a result, you have the mess you have.
Yo, that is hilarious. But that does sound like a little bit of nepotism, what the Lakers are suffering from, where they just hire people that they know, and it just doesn't really work out. As we've seen since, I believe, since 2013, ever since when Dwight Howard left that team, it's just been nothing but nepotism over there. They just, they don't know what they're doing. They only hire close friends, and it just doesn't really work out. I mean, I don't know what the hell Stephen A. Smith was talking about. It would be dope to have another New Yorker, but it doesn't mean it's going to work.
Kyrie Irving is putting on a show every night at Barclays. KD is going to be coming back to that team next year.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, he put on a couple of shows, but overall, they're not really a winning team right now.
New York fans, I used to be a Knicks fan my whole life. Stayed up all night to get playoff tickets, Stephen A. My brother and me waiting on Blockbuster line around the corner to buy nosebleed tickets to watch Patrick Ewing and them in the playoffs. I go way back with the Knicks. Fire yourselves as fans. The Brooklyn Nets are worth paying attention to.
That's unfucking real, man, what he just said. Fire yourselves as fans. Like I said, Knicks fans like this, we need to get rid of. But like I said, there is some sort of us versus them when it comes to the media, because this same type of energy is not shared with other teams, especially with other owners, because there's owners out there that just use their teams as cash flow. I mean, they don't go over luxury tax. They don't, even when they have young players that are becoming stars, they don't want to pay everyone. They end up trading guys. But the Knicks somehow have the worst owner in sports that goes over the luxury tax more often than other teams. It is what it is. You guys let me know what you think. You guys stay safe. Peace.